Good evening. And for those of you who don't know, I'm Chris Wright, Chair of the Elections Board. And on behalf of myself, Kirk Renaud, and Karen Elkins, the two other members of the board, I want to welcome you to this year's version of our annual pre-election candidates forum. The election board normally hosts an in-person candidates forum in the town hall, but because of COVID-19, there was no in-person forum last year, and out of an abundance of caution, the board decided again this year to make it a virtual event. We know how sick everyone is of Zooming, and we're grateful for those of you who once more clicked the link tonight, including those of you who are participating. We're also grateful to have with us tonight the three candidates for council positions, Rich Broncotta, Irene Lane, and Barney Rush. All three of you are well known in the town and really need no introduction, but a few words to introduce yourselves as you take on the first question wouldn't be out of order. Every year, the board solicits questions for candidates from the public, and every year we end up organizing them and adding our own. So the board has gotten quite good at asking candidates the things that we think people should want to know. And the same is true tonight. I have a handful of questions, none of them designed to embarrass anyone or put anyone on the spot, but we hope they will give all three candidates a chance to explain their motives and expectations in a personal way that may not be possible once they take their seats on the council dais. So we'll also welcome questions coming from the audience via the Zoom chat function if we have time within the hour allotted to our conversation. I want to add that, as Todd said, everybody except for those of us who are participating is muted for now. But if you have a question and want to put it in, please type it in the chat, and Todd or I will try to pluck it off and add it to our repertoire of questions. So let's begin with a rather general question. And in each case, I'm going to pose them in an order of what I'll call reverse seniority. That is Rich first, then Irene, and then Barney. So first of all, Irene and Barney are incumbent council members, and Rich is currently chair of the Public Service Committee and has served heroically on Purple Line Mitigation Committee. So all of you are familiar and familiar to the residents of the town. In a few words, beginning with you, Rich, would you briefly introduce yourself and tell us why you decided to run, or to run again, in the case of the rest of you, for the council? Rich, would you start off?
Sure, I'd be happy to. I'm Rich Broncotta. I've been in the town for about 20 years. My wife's been in the town for about 40 years. All during that time, I've enjoyed the ambience of the community, the people of the community, and our lovely infrastructure. It's quite an amazing town. And by the past activities on the Purple Line and the Public Service Committee, I've been impressed by the way the town has handled some of the difficult situations we've come up against, and especially the board, the council being civil in its interactions with the community and the way in which they deal with issues. And I thought, after being here as long as I have, it was time to participate in this in these town activities. I enjoy it. We walk every morning and every evening with our dog throughout the town, and it's a lovely place to live, and I'd like to keep it that way. That's all, Chris. Thank you.
That's very nice. Thank you. Irene?
Great. Well, thanks for organizing the forum, and thanks to everyone tonight for taking the time out of their schedules or their bedtimes, depending on how it's looking at it. So I know just about everyone, but just for the record, Irene Lane, and it's probably the 5th or maybe the 500th Zoom session that you all have been attending. You know, this all coincided with this first term on the council. So we haven't yet gotten, you know, we had our first meeting with in-person meeting with town council that occurred earlier this month, which was wonderful. We're starting to get back to normal. But a lot coincided during this first 2 years on the council, just with the pandemic, that is, and that's including the conversion of the former 4-H property to Corso Chevy Chase, which is a senior living community that many of us are meeting with residents and understanding their hopes and dreams and concerns and suggestions. The Farm Women's Market project, we're converting surface parking lots to parks. That's been another big project. Developing a process for the distribution of ARPA funds that also came in line with the last 2 years. Making our town parks more accessible for all residents. And then, of course, responding to various residential rezoning proposals. So throughout, it's been a privilege to be able to serve the town, meet with residents. I'm a relatively new resident to the town, about 5 years on right now. But it's been wonderful to meet with neighbors and hopefully answer questions, get the information, and provide beneficial results. Part of your question was, what's to look forward to in the next, 2-year term. And aside from the Corso Chevy Chase, Purple Line, Farm Women's Market projects, I see 3 areas that I think that would warrant some additional focus. And one is the expansion of green infrastructure in the town. And that kind of coincides with lots of projects that the Climate and Environment Committee are working on, but also things such as increasing awareness and education about all the different programs that we have, from trees to rebates of gas-powered leaf blowers, things like that. Town communication. I'm sorry.
Well, I'm going to interrupt you because you're actually answering a later question.
Oh, okay. I will
just ask you why you wanted to run.
Okay. Well, just the other issues that I think are still, if you will, left to be working on, and that's town communications and also enforcement as well. So I'll stop there.
Thank you. You'll get a chance to come back on that one, but
excellent.
I wanted to save that for a different environment.
Thank you. Barney.
Sure. Is ditto an allowed answer? Probably not. I'm Barney Rush, and this is now, I'm including my 6th year of being on the town council, so 3 terms, and I'm running for a 4th term. And I think, I'll say a couple of reasons why I'm keen to run again. One is, I think many of you know, I've been very deeply engaged from the get-go when I first joined the council in the whole work to hopefully bring about the creation of the new parks adjacent to the Farm Women's Market. And I had certainly hoped that a financial plan would be set in concrete and everything would be launched prior to the end of being 6 years on the council, but that has not happened. And while there's been a great deal of progress, it is not yet truly a done deal. And even assuming that we do get the support from the county, there's still going to be a lot of additional work that I wrote up in the note that I put on the listserv the other day about it. And I've just felt so involved and engaged in it that I'd really like to stay the course and stay on for another term and really help be engaged with my colleagues on the council, with other communities, with the long range planning committee, because there are a lot of people involved. It's a real group effort, but to stay engaged all the way through and really know that this really dramatic change in the infrastructure adjacent to our town will really come about. But aside from that, I really do enjoy a great deal of the work that we do on a steady state basis. Irene highlighted many of the important projects, but there's also just the nuts and bolts of what is required to keep a town running well. And it's a satisfying experience. I enjoy the engagement with the community and with the citizens. And I'm now more semi-retired than I was, so I have the opportunity to bear down on it and look forward to serving another 2 years.
Thank you, Barney. The next question is sort of more personal and more backgroundy. What experience in your past life do you think, particularly, has best prepared you for being a town council member? And Rich, I'll start again with you. An experience in your past life.
Well, being married is probably a good one to start with. But aside from that, I am a retired civil servant. I spent 40 years in the departments of energy and transportation. And then the last 10 years, I've worked for the governors of the northeastern states on their transportation issues, which they jointly had a desire to work together on. I think over that time, the whole experience of just managing large projects and interacting with people and the public on some pretty tough issues was a good foundation for working in the town itself. And as a matter of fact, the town is really a microcosm of what happens, you know, at the state and at the federal levels. You have a bunch of people with diverse views. You have to listen to them and hopefully bring them together. But in the end, decisions need to be made to make things function properly. So I think over my career, I've been able to do those things, and I enjoy it. Like Barney, I enjoy that. I enjoy doing. I enjoy being a civil servant, and that probably is the best way that I can put it.
Thank you. Irene?
I think the most relevant experience to town council has been my entrepreneurship experience. So about 12 years ago, I started a company that was focused on sustainable travel. And it was just me. So there was a lot of putting together partnerships, product development, marketing, and in some cases hiring and all of that. And the experience I got from that was the constant pivoting that needed to occur as the business grew, and realizing that the travel and tourism industry is constantly changing. So I believe that directly translates to the town council, because there's changes all over, different policies that are coming about from the county council that sometimes seem out of the blue. A lot of research that needs to be done to address what sort of situation might be coming across, or how we can best communicate with residents and inform them so that we can get information and then relay that accordingly back to wherever it might be in the county or on with my colleagues on the town council. So the ability to kind of take in all the information, realize that things are changing, grow, constantly communicating, all of that has served me well, I think, on the town council.
Thank you. Barney?
Sure. I'll cite the fact that my most recent career has been serving on boards. I was on the board of directors and ultimately the chairman of the board, one of the largest developers of solar energy projects in India, publicly traded on the New York Stock Exchange. And also for the last 9 years, I've been on the board, really a public authority that oversees the electric grid for the 6 New England states. And I think it's been really important for me to become very accustomed to working and really understanding the value of board work as distinct from my prior career, which was as a senior executive and then the CEO of a startup. And I really believe very strongly in the value of the collective, that the decisions that can come out of a well-functioning board will be better, more thoughtful, more integrated, more creative than the views that any one of the board members might have had going into their discussions. It takes a well-functioning board, a board where people truly respect each other, where they listen to each other. They listen to a broader range of stakeholders, in this case, obviously for our town, the residents. But there's the freedom to really express your views. To me, I have seen so much value come out of those processes in both the boards I've sat upon, that I've taken from that very much the spirit of the way that I'm pleased that our town council is functioning. where there are 5 voices. We're all different. We have our different backgrounds. But I believe the way we come together and discuss matters in the way that's civil and respectful also leads to ultimately the best decisions. And one of the things that's important in that is that you don't go into a meeting saying, here's my view. My job is to get other people to agree with me. That's not the case. You go into a meeting saying, well, I happen to have a view, but my job is to listen hard to everybody else's views and be willing to change mine if appropriate, or in any event, perhaps come up with a synthesis that nobody else has thought of, but comes out of our collective discussion. And it's that ability and freedom to think that way that I think I've learned from my past board experience, in which I find valuable in thinking about and applying to the work on the town of Chevy Chase.
Thank you. That all 3 of those answers are inspiring and certainly make me feel good about the council and you guys going on to. Enough from me. The next one is particular. Is there a particular issue that you look forward to working on in the county council? One specific issue. 2 of you have actually been there, done that. Rich, I'll start with you again. Is there a particular area that you are interested in focusing on or have been thinking about?
Well, Chris, you said county council. I assume you meant the town council.
I said town council.
Unless you thought we ought to run for other office.
Rich looks puzzled. Did you not hear me?
He's on mute.
Are you on mute?
Yeah, Rich is on mute.
Thank you. That's probably a good idea, Chris.
No, I didn't do that. I did nothing. I don't know how that happened. I'm innocent or ignorant, one or the other.
It's hard to pin down. It's hard to pin down just one issue, but as I keep, I'm torn. I'm this whole idea of keeping the town running well and financially sound is always attractive to me. But Barney listed a couple and Irene listed things that are important to the town. There's so many that are on the plate. I just think we have to, the thing we got to do is just continue to work through these things to get them done. But over the last couple of years, since on the public safety committee, if I was going to list just one issue that I think kind of overlays them all, it's the safety of our citizens on our streets as pedestrians, as cyclists, and as citizens. And we need to make everybody feel safe in our town, whether they disagree with the ideas that the board comes up or the council comes up with. But we've got to have everybody feel like they're part of this enterprise that we've got going here.
Fair enough. Irene, a particular issue?
Yeah, I agree with Rich's sentiments that it's hard to pick one, but being forced to that, to answer that question, I would say, if I can cheat a little bit and say town communication / engagement. There are lots of new families that are moving into the town, and some are engaged through listserv, some are signed on to the town crier. Of course, everyone receives the forecast. There's social media side, but there is a general sense, at least when I'm communicating with residents, it's like, oh, I didn't know this was happening, or I didn't read about this issue or whatever. And some of it is obviously the last 2-3 years, all of our lives have been appended. Seems like life is just going that much quicker. But I think that from a town council perspective, one of the things that I personally would like to focus on is the ability to meet people in whatever communication method that they prefer. So that might result in 6 different ways of communicating with different people, but finding out what it is that is important to them, how often they want to be communicated with, and how they want to be communicated with is so key, because in general, there hasn't been as much engagement by residents, whether it be volunteering on different committees or engaging in, coming to events potentially, engaging on different issues. We want there to be, I would like there to be more engagement so that neighbors are, if you will, knowing each other better, trusting each other more. So when the inevitable issue arises, there's that basis of trust to start with. So that's the biggest thing that I'm seeing. Thanks.
Thank you. Barney, I can maybe guess what you're going to say, but please, the floor is yours.
Well, I've already spoken about the parks. I'm interested in staying the course and working on. But I think all three of the major infrastructure issues I'll refer to the undertaking the improvements in Zimmerman Park, and also carefully bird dogging and following the work of Corso in the development of the retirement community and how that affects the town and the near neighbors. And we're trying to make sure that that's managed in a way that minimizes the disruption, but maximizes the degree to which that community is going to be integrated and be compatible with the town, which I think is the term that is going to matter here. I think the other thing, which I don't know if I look forward to it so much, but I think it's going to be out there and it's going to be just a huge issue that we all are going to have to get deeply engaged in, is the issue of potential zoning change. And I think that's going to Irene's good point about the need for communication and engagement. I can't think of any issue that's going to be more important for us to be deeply engaged with our fellow residents on than how that's going to be managed when the county ultimately, which I suspect will happen within at least the next 2 years, will come up with some plan for potential rezoning with allowing more density and how we're going to respond to it.
That's a big issue. I didn't think of that. Thank you all three of you. And there is a converse to this. The second part of this question is there an issue that you know is going to come up and you actually dread having to deal with it? I'll start with it. None of you actually looked at this one, but let's try it. Rich, what is it? Parking maybe? What would you say?
I think, the town has spent over the last 10 years, I spent a lot of time looking at traffic, and we've done this particular council has done a lot of things to mitigate that based upon the recommendations from the Public Service Committee. But I think with the return of pre-pandemic travel and some of the issues that seem to be arising on Connecticut Avenue, there's a new Maryland Connecticut Avenue study that's talking about reducing the lanes from 3 to 2, which would cause tremendous overflow of traffic into the local communities on either side of Connecticut. And so I think I dread it because it's one of those issues that there's really not any good solution. And but the thing I think we spent a lot of time talking about this on the Public Service Committees. What we don't want to do is we don't want to transfer problems from some of our streets and neighborhood of our neighborhood into other places just because we think that's we want to spread the harm. It just doesn't make sense. And so could be another contentious issue. So and I didn't like it then, and I don't think I will like it in the future.
That's a very good heads up. So thank you. Irene.
Yeah, Barney brought this up, and it is interesting with respect to the potential residential rezoning efforts that are being heavily discussed at the county level, county official level, county council level, but it's unclear as to the timing of this. I have attended a lot of meetings surrounding not only Thrive Montgomery 2050, but also the Attainable Housing Strategies Initiative. feel pretty up to speed, aside from probably the real particulars there, which probably will change 5 times before things are finally voted on. But ultimately, the discussions need to take place with respect to this change might be coming, depending on the county council members that will be elected in November. And what the reason that I am not looking forward to these discussions, if you will, is that it's hard to start from a, we're just going to say no, and as a community, and then kind of hope that it goes away. The discussions that are occurring countywide are such that we as a town, and even the greater Chevy Chase communities are better served when we come from a position of, tell me more details. How can we thread the needle? How can we make it so it's a win-win proposition? Meaning it's ultimately gaining to the goals with affordable housing and more diverse housing types and things like that, rather than the we're starting from no. I will say that initial conversations have gone on about this topic with town residents. There was a small number of residents who felt this way, that we should not be changing from single family housing zone. And then an equal, if you will, smaller number of people who felt that lots are large enough that small apartment buildings should be built everywhere. Majority of residents are kind of settled in the let's discuss duplexes, maybe triplexes, and that's what I think if we can get more information from residents about that, allow for them to learn more about what it means to have these types of changes, impacts on parking, increased traffic, for example, impacts on our infrastructure, school enrollment, things like that, then we can start actually gaining some additional ideas that we could bring back to council and planning board so that things can get adjusted accordingly. But yeah, that's going to be a really interesting set of conversations.
Thank you. Barney?
Yeah, let me give a slightly different answer. First, I agree completely with the issues that Irene and Richard both brought up. But if you're asking what I dread are times when I feel that residents believe, rightly or wrongly, that they've not been given a voice, or that the council hadn't heard them or listened to them enough. And I think generally the council works very hard to not let that happen, but we're not perfect. We make mistakes ourselves. But what I'm most concerned with is when residents feel that they have to, that they haven't been heard, and they need to get to express their views. And obviously we have to stop, listen, pay careful attention, correct if we need to make a correction. But what matters most to me coming out of that is that we actually have a process of engagement and discussion, so people can actually really ventilate their views, think it through, hopefully come to a better place in terms of a conclusion, and realize that the council really is trying to do its best. We're all volunteers, but really trying to do its best. It's really that rapport with the residents that in my mind matters most, and almost any issue can be worked out if we have the that basic rapport and a willingness to share our views across the table or face to face, or walking around when we're visiting things. I think one of the examples of that recently was on the Zimmerman Park, where we went from a point of a lot of contention to ultimately working to a solution that I think a lot of people accept and are even excited about. That was a long process, and we had to work hard at it. But to me, if we get into that situation, that's how we have to try to get out of it.
Very good. Thank you. Irene has addressed this already in a sense, but one of our board members, the election board members, interested in seeing if everyone gets their information in a different way. Do you think the current array of tools, forecast, town crier, town neighbors, and so forth, is sufficient to keep those who want to be informed in the loop? And how do we increase that loop, circle, whatever? Irene, you've begun to start this discussion. Let me go back to Rich, and we'll start with you. Rich, what do you think?
Well, what I think is I don't know. I think there's a whole range of tools that we probably haven't tapped into, and you know, the technology's there to do a lot of things. And I agree with Irene. I'm always constantly chagrined when we have a meeting and residents say, gee, this is the first I've heard of this, and something we've been working on for months, and it's a problem. And I think we need some people who are communicators in the present, who know the tools to see if there's things that we can do. So you know, I hate to leave it as it is, because obviously a lot of people aren't getting information. Barney, I have a quick anecdote that we've got the gas is out on our weed blowers, our leaf blowers, and I know about it. We were walking my dog the other day. Barney was out playing tennis, and I see him run off the court because he hears a lawn blower, a leaf blower, and I all of a sudden realized that I got a guy spreading mulch in my yard, and he's probably using a leaf blower to clean up the mulch. And I hadn't told him, you know, don't use a gas leaf blower. Barney's runs over, and I said, I apologize. I said, I'm sorry. I knew about it. I just didn't tell him. And that's a problem we've always got. So I'm all for increasing communications, and we ought to search out ways to do it better.
Let me flip to Barney first and let Irene wrap this one up, because she's already had a good crack at it. And maybe you want to sharpen this discussion when we get to you, Irene. So Barney, let me just ask you to address this next.
Well, I think, you know, I will acknowledge I don't feel I have a very good answer for it. We do have the town crier system, which, you know, goes to almost 1,000 individuals. Ann Wild, who I see is on our call, and Wicca, then very carefully take what's on the town crier and put it into the listserv, which is largely the same, but not entirely. There's another bunch of people who are on the listserv that don't receive the town crier. And then we have both the electronic and the print version of the forecast, and the print version goes into everybody's homes. And I would concur that there's more work that I'm sure we can do. And I think like Rich, I don't know. There are unknown unknowns, I guess, if that's the right word. I mean, I don't know what other things could be done, because I'm not fluent enough in more modern or updated forms of technology to know what we aren't doing. So I do think there's need for us to reach outside, get some consultants to think about that. And there may be ways that we can present our material in ways that is more exciting, draw people in more easily. I don't know, but I'm not sure that I'm of exactly how we're going to get that further engagement that Rich was talking about, because I also see it as well, that there are times when we don't feel that people know what we thought was clear in terms of asking for comments, for example, or positions that we're taking. And we think we've done it by sending out a town crier, but obviously that's not been entirely successful. So I think there is more work to be done there, and we're going to need some outside help. I know what result or what our objective should be, but I can't say tonight that I am aware or know enough to know what the best means is to accomplish it.
Thank you. Irene, give us a wrap on this one. You started this conversation earlier. Given what was said, what do you think?
I think that so in your question, you said those who want to be communicated with, right?
Yeah. Right.
So right now we don't know how many people actually just don't want to hear from us, right? Like we don't have it as a town council, potentially town staff. We don't know how many people are, life is too much, and I'm I'm fine the way things are, if you will.
Yeah.
And, but a thought that occurs to me is, given the last couple of years and kind of the isolationist tendencies that we may have had, first for our personal safety, but just even Zoom has created a little bit of a barrier there. I wonder if a way to go about this might be a lot of information through the town spreads word of mouth, right? So your neighbor, who you once in a while see, told you about something, you're shocked or you're very happy, and boom, you react from there. I wonder if one possibility might be to tap into the groups of people, because if you come in as a young family, you're more likely having friends with other families with children, everyone is around the same ages, like tapping into the Rosemary Hills, Chevy Chase Elementary School, BCC type of, making the extra effort as a town council member to reach out and saying, are you aware of these, what is it, how is it that you would like to know more? Ideas like that, because potentially it may not always be a technical solution that will, yes, it's definitely the most efficient, and it might even be the least expensive and less time consuming, but it may not be effective. So I'm wondering if some of the just tried and true just conversations, neighborly conversations need to take place. We used to have block captains, and I understand maybe it's reinstituting that idea, but these are just ideas. I think talking about it as a council though will be necessary, and trying things, see what might work and moving the needle. So
Looking at different audiences. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you all for that one. This is a question that came from Kurt. I have to tell you, as somebody who has been there. And he asked, do you think the current division of work between town staff, citizen advisory committees, council, and the council meets the needs of community input and at the same time avoids overworking a volunteer council? Rich, you've been there on the Public Service Committee. You're part of that committee structure. Give us your thoughts on that, and then we'll work through the other incumbents.
Well,
does the structure work?
Yeah, it does work, and I think it works fairly well. I think the fundamental problem is we just have problems. We've got a large community, but we have problems getting volunteers on these committees. And but once they're on, the people, I can't tell you how many hours some of the committee members have put in on various issues. They're very diligent. So it works when we have enough people to populate these committees, and it's just hard to recruit people to get on them. So I don't think we need to. The other issue I think is the town staffing. I mean, I think over the last few years, it's for whatever reasons we just we lose staff, we gain staff, we don't keep staff, and I think having the right group of professional staff certainly helps. I credit Todd with saving my rear end a lot on the Public Service Committee, from he and Dave both, for making stupid recommendations that have already been thought of and didn't work. So I think fundamentally the town's the structure of our committees and the council works. I think it really gets back to the issue of we need to have better citizen participation in this, in all these efforts.
Thank you, Irene.
yeah, I would agree with Rich. I believe that the structure is a good one, the right number of standing committees. The residents that are part of these committees are very dedicated people and love diving deep into a situation. So and in the case of the committees that I've been liaison with in the last year, there's a lot of I should say not a lot, but the committee, the volunteers that come in, they're younger as well. So that helps, if you will, get that next generation of interested volunteers. With respect to the town staffing, yes, that is something that is being addressed. We have a new constituent services aide that started on Monday. Very, very enthusiastic gentleman, and looking forward to seeing how that works out. But there is more staff that's needed, and over time, addressing issues of enforcement, addressing issues communications, environmental sustainability, intergovernmental liaising. That these are all positions that need to be filled. They have been, in the last 2 years, covered by the town council members. And while within the present council, that at least for the next week or so, some of us have more time than others because of various professional responsibilities. I think that as we talk with residents who also might want to run for town council, the idea of having a little bit more consistency in hours, and not pigeonholing as to you only have to worry about 3 hours a week, if you will, but something a little bit more consistent in terms of expectations of the level of effort associated with each project will probably help in attracting more people. So I personally believe that as the town staffing situation resolves itself within the next however long, months to 6 months or so, I think that that will work itself out. We were just in an unusual situation potentially in the last couple of years with everything else going on.
Thank you. Barney?
Yeah, I think a similar answer. I think the basic structure of the committees, and the way that they work with the council, and the way the council relies on committees for thought and advice works well. I think we have a phenomenal town staff. You're right, Rich, there's been changes, but there've been a core of 3 people for a very long time, headed by Todd, supported by Dave Walton, and with Miguel, and they're just 3 terrific individuals who do an incredible job.
Yep.
I think that what we're all in agreement on is that with the complexity of the issues we have, with the infrastructure programs we have in mind, with upcoming ones that Irene mentioned involving stormwater management and potential expenditure of the ARPA money, that more help is absolutely needed. And it's needed, and it'll make a lot of difference. I think first it will allow Todd to shed some of his more operational or administrative duties, will free him up for more help and work on more of the strategic issues. But also, I think, frankly, it'll allow us on the town council, I think Irene's correct, that many of us have stepped up and done extra work because Todd has been so overloaded. And that's not necessarily the right thing for the council. And it's certainly not the right thing in terms of going forward and attracting very good people in town who should feel that they can run without thinking that it's becoming a half-time job. So I think reworking the amount of work done by the different parts of the town government is desirable, so that we end up with a more, I'll say, a natural amount of effort that would be put on the back of volunteers on the town council. And I hope that we will be successful in this coming year in finding the additional person or persons that can allow all that to happen.
Well, thank you. It doesn't sound like any of you are trying to shirk work. And it sounds like you all think Rich knows what he's getting into. And the other 2 of you seem like you're satisfied with the way things are arranged. So that's great.
We didn't tell him everything,
Yeah, that's true. We don't want. Yeah, this is not a tell-all. This is just the consultation. All of you have lived in the town long enough to see a lot of change. Do you think the town will be significantly different 10 years from now? Rich, what do you think?
Well, change is inevitable. Yeah, it'll change. Whether and how it changes, it depends a lot on the discussions of the resolution, a lot of the things we've been discussing
Yes.
tonight. Yeah, so I think that it's part of the process. The change occurs and we need to deal with it, and we need to figure out the best way to move forward. Yeah, yes, it will change, and I think it's gonna, if we do it smartly, it will change for the better. So
Irene, I think, would you like to continue? You've already addressed this in one way, and Barney too, but do you want to have a few more words on this one before we go on?
Yeah, I agree. Change doesn't necessarily have to be viewed as a bad thing, right? There's opportunities within that. And if people are coming from a place of compromise and potentially compassion, starting from there, we could really, as a community, address the growth that's occurring at our borders, stormwater management issues that are occurring within the borders, the various just demographic changes that are occurring, and really continue to be a welcoming community that has been for the last 100 years and more. Increase the amenities that we're offering. I think it's just a matter of how people decide to react to the changes that are going to occur that will allow, as a community, us to make some have some good conversations and potentially come out with decent solutions or resolutions.
Thank you. Brian, you want to?
Sure. No, I think certainly the town is going to change. I don't know that it's going to change very dramatically in terms of its physical look. Even if there's a zoning change and we have some duplexes that are allowed, for example, I don't think that's going to be a dramatic change, because the homes have a value such that most of them will be sold on to people who will keep them as a single house anyway. There'll be some number that are tear downs, and you may see a duplex go up instead of a single family home in the future if the zoning has changed. But I don't think we're going to see over the next 10 years a huge change physically in the town. I think what we will see is continued development of Bethesda, and that will have some spin-off effects in terms of traffic, but also some more opportunities. I mean, you know, the development of these parks and revitalized Farm Women's Market is going to be an exciting new amenity for the town, which wouldn't be there had there not been the Bethesda downtown plan changes. So, you know, you get to go to the bad, or the bad with the good. But the other change that I will mention that I think is certainly ongoing and is harder to know what we do about it is the changing, at least in my view, of the income levels and the economics of town residents. I haven't done a survey, so this is my, I don't know, assertion or surmise, but I'll bet if you went around town and asked people, could you afford to buy a home here today? That you would find a lot of residents who would say, no, I couldn't possibly do that. And so I think that we are seeing a shift where this town has always been affluent to some people being very wealthy, that it's going to be, you know, just inevitably seems to be becoming even more affluent, more for people who are quite wealthy. And I think it's something we should be conscious of and be thinking about what is out there that, I don't know, again, it's very hard to deal with or fight, if you will, economic forces, but just be aware of it. Think about that in the context of the zoning issue we're going to have. But something to be aware of is a kind of change that we should be, we should be cognizant of it. So it's not, change does not just mean changes physically, but changes to who we are as a community and who can afford to live here.
That's certainly very, very true. None of us, many of us could not ever move in here again. We've addressed this a little bit already, but it's, you know, as you go through, you answered the questions in anticipation of my next question. But anyway, I had wanted to ask you, I mean, it is astonishing that the three of you are willing to put this much time into the town, and you obviously haven't learned your lesson. But the number of people who is willing to do this is really quite small, as you've already acknowledged. Is there something we could be doing that would encourage more civic participation than we're getting now? I mean, you don't have to have long, you can just say, I don't know, which is in a way what we've already said. But Rich, did you want to follow that a little further?
I don't know.
Because you've been trying to get people on the public service committee for a
Yeah,
long time. You know how it is to recruit people.
yeah. And I think it goes back to what Irene said. I think if we have more kind of clearly defined roles about what the people on these committees are signing up for when they volunteer or on the board, and can communicate other, people that are there now can communicate with the potential people, we may get more volunteers. They're not, I would imagine that if we looked at the rosters of the committees, you probably find the same people, just some of them moving from one committee to another over time. But it's probably a core of people in the town that really is, that vital to the sustaining of some of these committees. And I think maybe we need to reach out through some means to talk to people about, what civic duties there are when you live in a town like this. So I don't know how to do it. I'm not a communications expert, so maybe we need some help doing that.
Irene, do you have any thoughts? Want to put some words on this one?
I don't know either, but you know what? We have some really cool people living in this town that probably have much better ideas. And this is what the beautiful thing is of living in a smaller town with an active set of committees and town council members and staff. If anyone that's listening to this recording or on the call right now that has ideas for how to increase civic engagement, please let us know. We will try. It's very important. It's very key.
Barney, last
Yeah,
word.
I agree with that. Also, though, I think we have had one example only a few years ago that made a huge difference. And Kirk is still on the phone. I'll give him full credit for this, which was we had a climate and environment committee that had basically fallen off a cliff. There was just no interest in it. In fact, it was basically disbanded for a year, just had nobody wanting to be on it. And Kirk took it on himself to really revitalize it. And his insight was that people, if you just said to them, do you want to come to a committee, that meets once a month? Well, that doesn't sound very appealing. But if you say to them, well, here's an issue. Would you like to be engaged in this particular issue? Almost like a task force where you don't necessarily have to be deeply engaged in everything else the rest of the committee might be doing, but you can make a difference in this issue that you care about. That actually turned out to be a very successful way to cause a lot of people to get excited about serving with the Climate Environment Committee. Also, many of them then getting engaged in other parts of the agenda of that committee that went beyond the initial issue on which they were first engaged and decided to be engaged on. But it worked out very well. And I think that may be something that we can think of in other areas as well, where people can get engaged on a specific item. And that also helps address the issue of time commitment and something that's more manageable, as well as the fact that they can really be engaged in what they really want to work on. So I think that might help. I'm not sure, I don't know if that would be a sea change in terms of enlarging the number of people volunteering for things, but it's something that we could work harder on to try to do in other areas.
Thank you. That's a good idea that will come out of this evening, I think. This is the moment where we got about 2 minutes to go, and I can rip through the questions in the chat and see if there's some things that you don't have to answer these. Some of them I can answer, and some of them, like there's one question about the drop box. Is the drop box at the Lawton Center for the election of town council members? And the answer is yes. And the other answer is people have already got their ballots in the mail, and please put them in the mail or put them in the drop box and vote. Voting for a town council member is your way of saying thank you in a way, because it's a way of recognizing our little piece of the democratic experience. and it's important that everybody, I think it's important that everybody votes. So I'll answer that question. Let's see what else is out there. Somebody asked, is it time to go for another strategic planning process? Does anybody have any feelings about strategic planning and want to address that? No. Fair enough.
I think that would be interesting once the pandemic is declared endemic. I think that would be a really good exercise for the town because it has been a number of years since that's happened.
Good answer. It's a very time-consuming engagement, and with all the things coming up with 4-H and the farm women's, sometimes that sort of planning seems like wishful thinking, but it's worth bringing it up anyway. So that was one of the questions. Traffic. Okay, this is a question for Rich. No, probably not for Rich, actually. How do we get the attention? There's a lot of residents who are going through stop signs and not abiding by our own traffic rules. How do we get the attention of the town residents so that we all need to follow the rules of the road? I don't know.
Let me take a crack. Well, first of all, the town has done a lot of work to mitigate traffic along some of the major thoroughfares, putting in new crosswalks, putting in speed humps, allowing a process to put in speed cameras, a very simplified process for residents to put in speed cameras. We've got blinking stop signs now to try to keep people, make them aware that there's a stop sign there and they should stop. So there's a lot of things that the town has done. The traffic study that was done a few years ago indeed reinforced that a significant number of the violations that are occurring in the town, and speed and no turns, are town residents. And I don't know if Beth's on the line right now, but yes, she is. Beth Barnett has as part of the Public Service Committee, has undertaken an effort, much like the Climate and Environment Committee does, of trying to put together little snippets of information for residents to put in the crier and on the web and all those places, things that you can do to be a better citizen in the town in terms of traffic and pedestrian and cyclist safety. So that, yeah, the answer is we need to do more. I think we're going to try and get the more information out. And it's needed.
It's a problem. Somebody said, yeah, but a lot of people in town think they're special.
That's right.
Thank you all. Did we really come to the end? It's 9 o'clock. I think we've hit most of the things in the chat. I don't think we've embarrassed anybody. And this is now the moment when you can tell me what I forgot to ask, or what you'd like us to know and that you forgot to say, or at least just to have the last word. So right now, let's start with Rich, or maybe we should let's reverse. Barney, how about you go first this time? Let Rich have a little rest here. Barney, would you?
Well, I'll give my
ask, Barney.
When I joined 6 years ago, and it was my great privilege and honor to join with Mary Flynn, and particularly with Scott Fossler, who just passed away, and all of us who knew Scott just felt so honored to be able to work with him. And as you may well remember, there was a tremendous period of contention on the town council prior to the time that Scott, Mary, and I joined. And we all joined very much with the view that it was our job, preeminent above all other jobs, to try to reduce those divisions and be able to have a greater amount of mutual respect and civility and better listening, and also to really try to address the legitimate concerns that people had different views than we had, and deal with it. Just for myself personally, it was clear that many people in the town have been very concerned about having ordinances that seem too strict, and not enough flexibility. And even though a lot of those people supported other candidates and not myself, I took it on myself, working with the Land Use Committee as a liaison, to find a lot of ways that we could change the ordinances and in fact make them more flexible, because I felt that was part of the process of demonstrating that we were coming together as a town, not simply demonstrating who won and who lost. And that view is something that I still carry very close to me. And in serving another 2 years, I would very much want to be able to say, after 8 years, that the spirit that Scott brought to the council 6 years ago is still very much alive, in terms of the respect and civility and our ability to listen and try to find solutions together.
Nice, thank you. Irene?
Gosh, there isn't so much more for things to know. Thank you, Barney, for mentioning Scott's and his legacy, for us that had the privilege of talking with him and learning from him. It's an absolute privilege. I came from a community, I lived in Virginia before moving here to the town, in a community that was kind of like the Wild West. Anything went, you could do whatever you wanted. There really wasn't a sense of community at all. And a couple of things occurred that made me realize that it was time to kind of look for a different community to live in. And obviously the privilege of being able to do that. But so I came in with the mindset of getting involved in however way that people would want me to be involved. So it's been such a privilege and honor to be able to talk with residents, represent their views, as you know, different discussions have taken place within the council and on the county. And you know what? It's been fun. It really has been fun to be able to learn the different conversations that are going on behind the scenes at a county level, and the different personalities at play, and also trying to problem solve, constantly trying to problem solve. It is a lot of work. You're saying, oh, you know, you guys haven't learned your lesson yet, but it's a lot of fun still, and working with town staff members, with the rest of the council, and hopefully Rich as well. That all continues for me. I'm really looking forward to it. So thank you for giving me that chance.
I would say that's the best advertisement for civic involvement I've heard in a week. Thank you. Rich, you got the last word here.
Well, I don't have much to add, because I love this town. One of the things that I am passionate about, I guess, is that every person in this town has a right to be here and to live a happy existence here. And if we can value that and stay and stay as neighbors, it'll go a long way. And I think the civility of the town council forms that leadership that helps us do that. So, it's one of the things that I'm anxious to be a part of, is that hopefully to continue that civility and camaraderie that the council has had over the last few years.
Well, thank you all three. May our national leaders emulate you. Thank you for participating in this. Thank you to the audience for joining us for this virtual candidates forum 1920. And thank you for the dogs who have participated. Ours too.
My dog thanks you as well.
Best of luck to all of you on May 3rd. And to our audience, thank you for your interest in town government and in our democratic process. Good luck. Thank you and good night.
Thank you very much, Chris
Thank
and
you.
Eric and Karen. Appreciate it. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.